Folks, today will be the 19th birthday of Nolan Wells, yet he is dead. They are still investigating to find out what happened to this young black man in Mississippi. His mother, Christine Wansley, could only post a heartfelt message to him. She posted, "Today you are 19, No. There's so many things we want to say, but we will keep it simple. As we sit here and reflect on what an amazing kiddo you grew up to be, we can't help but to feel blessed, honored, proud, and most of all thankful. Thankful we were able to experience a glimpse of God's love in human form. Although you are no longer physically here with us, we will always celebrate you and the legacy you have left for us to protect. You have taught us so much about how life and how every day is a blessing and how we have to do better at just living in the moment. Thank you for being the best son, brother, grandson, nephew, and friend anyone could ever ask for. Thank you for bringing joy, laughter, and real happiness to us each and every day. You are truly our angel. Raising you has been an absolute joy and honor. You will be missed every second of every day, and you will never be forgotten. Our sweet sunshine. Happy heavenly 19th birthday, No. Remember, don't eat too much Oreo cake and hug grandma for us. We love you, our beloved son and brother. Love mom, dad, siblings, Louie, Ling, and family." Then she also said, keep negative comments to yourselves. Remember, Nolan is my and Elmore's son who we lost. Take prayer. Folks, later tonight, Nolan's family, friends, and supporters will hold a commemoration at the Greater St. John AME Church in Biloxi, Mississippi at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 Central with Reverend Dr. Jamal Bryant, Senior Pastor of New Birth Missionary Baptist Church in Georgia, as the main speaker. It's been 6 weeks since Nolan's body was discovered on July 6 in the water near Horn Island off the coast of Mississippi, 2 days after he had traveled there to a popular party spot by boat with a group of friends on the 4th of July. The family has still not gotten any answers as to how Nolan died. Last week, the Congressional Black Caucus called on the FBI to launch an independent investigation into Nolan's death. And this week, the NAACP joined the legal team representing the family of Wells. Joining us now is NAACP General Counsel Christian Clark. Christian, glad to have you back on the show. Explain why y'all have joined the legal team.
We've joined the legal team here led by Ben Crump because the NAACP stands firmly with Nolan Wells' family in the quest for truth here. We need to understand why Nolan Wells is not with us today. And we also know at the NAACP that our country has a very long and sordid history when it comes to Black lives and the need for transparency about when Black lives are lost, when Black lives go missing, when Black people go missing, when Black people go murdered, when Black people die under suspicious circumstances. We don't know the facts here. But it is important that we get to the truth here. And so the NAACP is bringing the full might of our association to the push and quest for justice and truth.
The Jackson County DA, Angel Myers-McElrath, released a statement addressing an alleged lack of transparency from her office and the timing of the release of information in the case. She said, "As district attorney, I do not have the same freedom to share information publicly that private individuals may have. For example, I do not have the freedom to release letters I've sent in this investigation, discuss witness cooperation, or the testing of evidence. I do not have the freedom to identify what information is verified and what information is false. I do not have the freedom to publicly adopt a narrative and choose one fact over the other, nor do I control the information released by private individuals who are not part of the investigative team. I cannot control whether private individuals release letters they have sent to me, just as I cannot prevent them from releasing letters I've sent to them. I cannot control which facts or bits of information are shared or whether that information is being shared in context, twisted, or misconstrued. Public commentary does not make the speaker transparent, just like exercising restraint consistent with the law does not make the process corrupt. The fact that something is said does not necessarily mean it's actually true. Prosecutors are held to the highest ethical standard under the law, as we should be. The people we serve deserve no less. I understand that a void is perceived when some are speaking publicly about a matter while others do not. I'll be stepping outside the bounds of the law if I were to fill that void and share information publicly. With all of the public pressure being placed on my office, filling the void would only serve to get pressure off of me. No one deserves better. There's no pressure that can be placed on me and no force that is greater than the weight of the oath I took and my responsibility to the people I serve. My obligation and commitment is to present the grand jury with all the evidence collected in this case in order for them to reach a decision based on a thorough investigation, complete evidence presentation, the actual truth, and an understanding of the law. I'm obligated to do so in keeping with the law and the rules of the court. On July 23, 2026, I released a recorded statement explaining the process and what the people of Jackson County should expect in this matter. There's nothing more to be shared at this time. I caution the public about assigning trustworthiness to things they read and see online. I also ask that rather than those individuals demanding that I step outside the bounds of the law and make public statements, we all step back, allow the process to work, and allow us to do the job we were elected to do. I stand firmly on the rule of law and my ethical obligations. That is what the people of Jackson County elected me to do. I will present the grand jury with a thorough, complete, and fair investigation into the death of Nolan Wells. Again, Jackson County DA Andrea Myers McElrath. I mean, so one of the things that she hasn't done is release the results of the autopsy. We've seen in other jurisdictions where it also was released. Do you believe that the DA's office could be more forthcoming to the public?
You know, what is missing here is more transparency. And I agree with the principles underlying a lot of what she said there. But what I don't think she recognizes is that this is a case of intense national interest, a case of intense public importance. And I do think that there is a degree of transparency owed to the public about your commitment to being thorough and comprehensive. um, every prosecutor's office wants to make sure you're not doing anything that will jeopardize the investigation or compromise the process that you're undertaking to uncover the truth. But where you have a world that is watching what's happening here, I do think that the prosecutor could do more to assure the public that she's leaving no stone unturned and doing her job and committed to uncovering the truth and working expeditiously to do so. To me, putting that statement out there and reinforcing that message would help meet the public's need and desire for more transparency in this moment.
So we have the independent autopsy, and again, there are a lot of people who are talking, and I'm seeing folks opining in so many different ways. And I think, and to your point, in the absence of information, that's what's causing people to have all these different discussions.
Yeah, that's right. When I was at the Civil Rights Division, leading the division at the Justice Department, and we had a case of intense national interest, we would activate an office that has been dismantled under this administration, the Community Relations Service, to go out in the community, to hear people, to reinforce that the FBI is doing its job. This is a smaller county without the kinds of resources that once existed at the federal government. But in the absence of that, I do think this prosecutor should be and could be doing more to reinforce to the public her commitment to doing her job fairly, thoroughly, and expeditiously. That is the message that I think is needed to fill the void that so many people are feeling in this moment.
What do you what do you say to the people? And I've seen these people say this, and I don't understand what the hell they're coming from. There are people out there who literally are criticizing Nolan Wells' parents for going to Chicago to the NAACP convention, going to Nashville for the National Urban League convention, going to Atlanta for the National Association of Black Journalists convention. And I got to remind those people, their job is to keep this on the front page, at the top of the website, to keep it at the top of the newscast. And so it is important that, yeah, you can call it pressure. The DA there cited pressure, but they want justice for their son. And we've seen other cases where they just sort of just float away. I agree with what the parents are doing.
I mean, I do too. And on top of this, they are a grieving family, right, that just buried their son. And for them to find the fortitude to still go out and to the public and to remind people about their loving and peaceful son, and to press and demand for truth and transparency into what happened here is not easy. And it takes a whole lot. And it's why the NAACP stands firmly by this family. We are providing moral support, we're providing legal support, we are providing investigative support, and we're reminding them at every turn that they are not alone and that we stand firmly behind them. I think more is needed in this moment in terms of compassion and empathy. At the end of the day, there is a young man who had his whole life ahead of him, a young man who aspired to be a D1 student athlete. He was a shining light. He should be with us celebrating his 19th birthday with his family today, period, point blank.
In Texas, a judge who presided over the Carmelo Anthony trial has been removed from all post-conviction proceedings. Carmelo's attorneys appealed for Texas District Judge John Roach Jr. to be recused from the case, and San Antonio Judge Sid Harley granted the appeal. Administrative Judge Ray Wheelis appointed retired Kaufman County District Judge Michael Chitty to hear Thursday's motion for a retrial. Carmelo's attorneys sought Judge Roach's recusal due to his public comments regarding the trial and the conviction. During today's hearing, the defense presented an 18-minute video of an interview with Judge Roach in which he expressed his belief that the jury reached the correct verdict. In June, Carmelo was convicted of murder and sentenced to 35 years in prison for the 2025 stabbing death of Austin Metcalf at a track meet. His legal team contends that he acted in self-defense and has appealed the conviction. Christian, y'all also have joined that team. Explain to people this process of having a judge recused based upon their comments.
Yeah, so here the NAACP hasn't joined the legal team, but the NAACP president, Gary Bledsoe.
Yeah, Gary Bledsoe is the president of the Texas State branch, Texas State Conference of the NAACP. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
That's right. And what we saw today is the defense team moved that this judge could not be fair or impartial in hearing the questions on appeal before the court. And I think this was the right outcome. And it, underscores the importance of prosecutors and judges being careful about what they're communicating to the public. But there is a moment, as we see in Nolan Wells' case, where you're not providing enough information. And here in Texas, we're seeing the judge provide more than what is necessary. But it's good that he spoke frankly, because it is clear that he did not have the capacity to be fair and independent and impartial in the important questions in the Carmelo Anthony case that are now before the court.
Last question for you. And you headed the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice. It has to be unsettling to watch a DOJ literally don't give a hoot about black victims. I've never seen a DOJ this awful when it comes to serving all citizens. I've talked to numerous black defense attorneys for families who said they don't even think about calling the DOJ to get them to investigate. So the Congressional Black Caucus is calling the FBI, hoping that they will launch an investigation. But how does it make you feel, someone who's serving that capacity, to watch just the callousness, if you will, and the attitude of whatever, we don't care?
Yeah, it's a dark moment, right? This Justice Department and the Civil Rights Division in particular has turned its back on Black people. But frankly, they've turned their back on America. They have abandoned the task of enforcing our federal civil rights laws. They have weaponized those laws to cause harm. And everyone in our country is more vulnerable and less safe because of the way in which we've seen Harmeet Dillon really turn this agency upside down. One thing that gives me hope in this moment is seeing the ways in which state attorneys general are stepping up to help fill the void, and the work that we're seeing the nonprofit civil rights organizations doing in this moment. So at the NAACP, we are doubling down on our work to protect voting rights, our work to promote a fair criminal justice system, our work to ensure equal access to jobs and to housing and to colleges and universities and more. So while this Justice Department turns its back on America, we should find hope in the institutions, and the people are stepping up to fill those voids in this moment.
Indeed.
Standing
Yeah,
with the Nolan Wells family is one example of that.
absolutely. Real quick questions from my panel. Robert Patillo, civil rights attorney at the Patillo Law Firm out of Atlanta. Robert, go.
Thank you so much for everything that you're doing. I wanted you to talk a little bit about what not having an active Justice Department, an active Civil Rights Division currently in this administration means for civil rights, means for police brutality, mean for these investigative purposes, because the federal government has traditionally been that backstop for Black America when we cannot get justice on the local level. What does it mean for regular people to understand that this is no longer what the federal government concentrates on?
Yeah, we've lost an important avenue for ensuring justice and accountability. Uh, Fighting police misconduct, fighting hate crimes were some of the highest priorities during my time leading the Civil Rights Division. These are some of the toughest cases out there. These are cases that sometimes are about life and death. What we have seen historically is that at the local and state level, there isn't always the same level of expertise and resources and political will to do these cases. So, in a moment, we are without an important avenue for seeking justice. But it is why we should draw some comfort in the ways in which state AGs like Tish James in New York, and Keith Ellison in Minnesota, and Nick Brown in Washington, and Kwame Raoul in Illinois. The ways in which our state AGs are stepping up to fill that void, and our civil rights organizations should give us some comfort in this perilous moment that we're in.
Representative Derek Jackson, state representative from Georgia. Derek, go.
You know, I always appreciate the work you did in the DOJ and what you continue to do. But I want to come back to the point of transparency. You know, as a legislator, we always ask for transparency in the process and everything that we do. And transparency is not an option. But the folks down in Mississippi continue to say, let the local investigation play out. And we've seen this playbook over and over and over again, where this process continue to have dead ends. The families never get the justice they deserve. We continue to have more questions than answers, and we still see more deaths in Mississippi. Another young lady was just found hung, hanging from a tree. So what can we do as legislators in all of 50 of these states demand for local investigations? Here in Georgia, we got the GBI. What can we do to demand transparency so that way these things can, just stop?
Yeah. Well, I think it's important that we continue to use our voices to demand that our taxpayer funded agencies, so whether they are local prosecutor offices, state prosecutor offices, and even this federal government, despite its track record, it's important that we keep the pressure on them. There's a startling statistic from the Centers for Disease Control from 2022, finding that Black males experience the highest rate of deaths classified as being of undetermined intent among males. So, with respect to Nolan Wells, we can't sit on our hands or stand by idly. We need to keep the pressure on and not allow memories to fade or that pressure to let up. it's important that we hold these entities accountable. They are there to serve the people. And so I thank you for the work that you're doing as a lawmaker to keep that pressure on.
Rebecca Carruthers, President and CEO of Fair Election Center.
Thank you. I lead a national voting rights organization. Next week is the anniversary of the March on Washington. What is the future of the framework for civil rights in this country?
Yeah, what a great question. Well, voting rights needs to be and remain at the center of our agenda. Thank you for your work. Right now, the number one task is making sure that our communities are prepared to turn out in full force this midterm election cycle. Despite everything that this administration is doing to discourage and deter our communities from participating, we need to make sure that folks are turning out at high numbers this election cycle so that we can begin to correct the course that we're on in this country. And in terms of reforms with respect to voting rights, now is the time for us to think about championing things like state voting rights acts. If and when the opportunity presents itself, we need to be ready to move forward with the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. And because so much of what we face in this country right now is not just harm happening at the hands of this administration, but harm coming from a very hostile United States Supreme Court, I do think that pushing for and demanding Supreme Court reform needs to be a part of our agenda and a part of the civil rights discourse that we're having in our country right now. How do we restore fairness and independence to the court? Ethics reforms, term limits. We need our nation's highest court to return to a place of being a fair institution that can hear the civil rights cases that come before it.
All right, then. Kristen Clark, I certainly appreciate it. Always a pleasure having you on the show. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for having me.
All right, folks, let me get personal for a second. My mom had questions about her Medicare, so she called Chapter, a Medicare advisory company, and she texted me right after saying it's a great benefit. It was easy. A real person walked her through the whole thing, and now she understands better what's going on. But it's not just her. A woman in Yonkers wrote in saying the process was so simple, the enrollment was easy, and she was so glad she called. Then there's Marilyn, 90 years old, in Florida, living on Social Security. Her premium climbed every single year north of $400 a month for coverage she could barely afford anymore. So what does she do? She called Chapter. They found her the same top-tier coverage for hundreds of dollars less. 90 years old, and finally somebody in her corner. I hear stories like that again and again from our community. The Medicare system was not built to work for you. Too much fine print, too many plans. Yet Chapter's advisors are independent and honest, the only Medicare advisors that compare every plan nationwide. They're focused on one thing, what actually works for you. If you're already in the right plan, they'll tell you. No games, and people who switched with Chapter saved an average of $1,100 a year. All it takes is 20 minutes. You talk to a real person, and it's completely free help. So call Chapter at 724-264-8281, 724-264-8281. That's Chapter.
Thank you all for being here. I know you've been on a whirlwind. I know you've been traveling a lot. So thank you all. And I know you all have other challenges happening around the country that you'll be getting to after this. But I am we are all so honored to meet you, and we are so saddened that we are connecting with you under these circumstances. You know, I want to tell you, they asked me to call them Christine and Elmore. I want to say Mr. and Mrs. Wansley, but Christine and Elmore. I want to tell you, in the audience in this room, but also watching at home, are thousands of Black journalists. But in addition to being Black journalists, these are mothers and fathers, siblings, cousins, aunts and uncles of Black children. And we see your humanity. And we're going to center that in this conversation. There you go. Yeah. I told Christine if we cry on this stage, it's okay, because we're among family.
Amen.
So you take your time. Christine, I'm going to start with you. On Friday, July 3rd, Nolan made you dinner. And so as you're telling us about the last time you saw your baby boy, I want you to talk to us about who Nolan was and tell us about that day.
So Nolan is and was an incredible, just incredible soul. He was the person who, no matter where you were in life, or what was going on, he was going to be your biggest cheerleader. And I can attest to that because after COVID, my sister was like, oh, you should do social media. And I'm like, I don't want to do social media. I like to just watch others. And then Nolan was like, no, Mom, you should do it. I'll help you with the videos. I got you. And, just anytime I was like, oh, I just really don't want to do this anymore, Nolan was like, no, Mama, you haven't posted today. And I'm like, I don't want to post. I'm tired.
Yeah.
But, that's the kind of person he was. He was God-fearing, God-loving. That boy had faith beyond measure. He was just a bright light. And he was our bright light. As far as that day goes, went to work, and he was making salmon. So he was FaceTiming me as I'm trying to see patients kind of in between, of course, not answering the phone in the room. And he's like, hey, Mama, how does this look? Is this enough season? Like, what am I supposed to do with this? And I was like, okay. I was like, you don't have to do that. And he's like, no, I'm going to take care of it. I was like, okay, sure. And so he finishes cooking, get home. He's like, yeah, what you know about this? And he was, guys, when I tell you, he loved to joke. Like, he was just one of those people. He wanted everyone around him to smile, be happy, feel comfortable and accepted. And that is the kind of person God made him. Us as parents, we definitely had that influence, but Nolan was just naturally a peacemaker.
Yeah.
And so after that it was, 8, and then he got ready to go. He did his normal, hugged us up, I love you, Mom. I was like, be safe, knowing this was gonna be his last weekend before going back to school, because football was starting, the summer training was starting. And this was his second year at Southwest. And so we knew this was going to be a big year for him. Dad and him had been training and doing all these things and really just kind of sitting with him and letting him know, like, hey, we're going to the next stage in your life as well as, your football career. So the focus was there, and he was ready.
So he leaves that day.
He leaves that day with, he drives his car, and he told us kind of a general, like, hey, we're going to go to the island. Like, we knew that. I'm staying at Jack's house. And Jax was a friend I think we've met in passing before. And that's the thing, I always say there's a difference in meeting someone, knowing of someone, and then knowing someone. Knowing implies that we've sat down, we've had discussions about your hopes, your dreams, knowing you, okay, hey, he stayed the night at my house, which Wyatt, one of his friends, he had stayed at our house a couple of times. And then Jax, again, that was one I just maybe saw in passing a few times. There was only a handful of young men that we actually knew, like, he grew up with. And when I say grew up, I'm saying from like first grade, they've known each other all through high school now that they're graduated. And that would be like Jalen and Javon, LeBaron. Those are kids that we knew. So it's been hard seeing all this kind of play out.
Yeah.
And, these are people that he considered friends.
Yes. Dad, I want to ask you, because it was Warren Hudson, one of the people that he traveled with, who called to alert you all that Nolan was missing.
Yes.
So we know at 5:44, the boat returns, Nolan is not there. At 11 p.m., he calls to say Nolan is missing. I wonder if either of you, whoever wants to answer, what happened in those few hours that prompted Warren to be concerned?
I'm not quite sure what would prompt him to be concerned, but all I can say is what I did that day. So me and my sister, we made an order of pancit, which is a Filipino noodle dish for one of our friends. They were having a big family get together, and we really didn't have anything planned for the 4th. So me and my sister are, cleaning up, and this is about 8. And she's like, hey, Nolan hasn't texted us. And that was the thing, Nolan was really big with communication with us, right? And so I call him, doesn't answer, I end the call. Call back, and this is probably, I think, maybe around 8. Don't quote me on the times, guys. Mm-hmm. So then I call again later around 8, still no answer. And then I want to say I called one more time, and I think that was at like 10:48. So I'm in the kitchen, my phone rings. Now this is probably like early 11 o'clock, somewhere around there. Phone rings when I make it back to the phone, and I'm like, whose number is this? Because, we get weird phone calls sometimes. They didn't leave a message. Number pops back up. I pick up the phone because it says maybe Warren. And I'm like, Warren? So this is 11:07. That's per my cell phone records. So I answered the phone. He's like, hey, Miss Christine, have you seen or talked to Nolan? I said, no. Why? He should be with you guys. And he said, oh, no, well, when we went to the island, there was a girl named Katie that he met, and he had decided to stay behind. And I said, what? Because we know our child. And Nolan isn't one to be like, oh, well, I'm just going to throw caution to the wind, and I'm going to stay here with this girl that I just met. So I'm on the phone with him. Now I'm in a panic. I'm running into my room. Elmore was in bed watching a different movie, and I'm like, frantic. He's like, what's going on? I'm like, Nolan is missing. I'm trying to pull up the GPS as I'm talking to him. And at some point, he tells me that, I was like, well, his phone says GPS Life 360, mm-hmm. not Snapchat.
Right.
Life 360 says that he's on land. And he was like, well, no, we have his phone. And I'm like, wait, what? And I'm like, okay. Because at that point, you're telling me, this is coming from Warren, don't worry about it. We're going to find him. It's going to be okay. Don't tell me not to worry. This is my child, my flesh and blood that I brought into this world. And you're telling me not to worry. Absolutely not. So then it was after the phone call ended, of course, asking him for information. What was he wearing? He was like, last seen, Northwest tip, black shorts, sunglasses. That's important. So I end up calling DMR, spoke with the DMR. She took all
Just for our audience, DMR.
So DMR is because he went missing on the island. They are basically the marine people, right? They're the ones who's going to launch the boats to go into the water and all that. But before getting off the phone with Warren, he was like, hey, I know some people at Coast Guard. I said, okay. He's like, I'm gonna call Coast Guard, you call DMR. Get on the phone with DMR. I give the young lady the information, and she tells me, hey, I got this. Let me call you back, because she was like, I'm not sure if this is gonna be in our jurisdiction, essentially. So then she calls back and she tells me, okay, yeah, we spoke with Coast Guard. And I'm like, okay, but they're like, this isn't our jurisdiction. You have to contact the city of Ocean Springs. I said, okay, hang up the phone, call an Ocean Springs Police Department. They say, hey, you have to physically come down and give a report. I said, okay. So on our way, because we don't live that far from the police station, on our way there, I was like, well, let me stop by the hospital, because there's a hospital that's maybe 5 minutes up the road from our house. Stop by there. I'm like, hey, have you guys seen this kid? Has he been brought in? The lady's like, no, ma'am, we hadn't. I said, okay, thank you. Run out, we go to the police department. Get to the police station, and the officer basically says, again, this is out of our jurisdiction. And at that point, I'm like, my God, who am I supposed to talk to? Who is supposed to help me with this? So then he said, it's going to be, you would have to call DMR. I was like, we've already called DMR. DMR said it's not in their jurisdiction. So we end up, I think at some point I had called Jackson County Sheriff's Office, yeah. So she calls back and she's like, hey, are you there? I said, yes, we're here, but he's telling us the same thing you guys told us, which is no, we can't take it. She gets on the phone with the police officer. Now this is Jackson County Sheriff's Department speaking with the Ocean Springs Police Department. Ocean Springs Police Department is saying, this is why we can't take this information. She says, okay. He gives me the phone back and she's like, okay, I'm just gonna take it. I'm just gonna take the information. And that was, we met an officer, it was after midnight. Right? Yeah, it was somewhere after midnight, met him in the McDonald's parking lot, gave him the information. He was just like, okay, thanks. I was like, like, where is the urgency? And so, as far as we know, there were no boats on the water that night. We actually, his high school football coach, Coach Bramlett, texted Elmore that morning. He said, hey man, I got a boat. Because again, we don't have boats. Let me make that very clear. We do not have a boat. We're not boating people. We don't do water like that, okay? So Coach Bramlett's like, hey, I got a boat. So we was like, great, let's go. We're on the water, we go out there, we walk the island. Cell phone works perfectly fine. I actually had almost an entire conversation with my grandmother who was in a panic as we're walking this island looking for anything.
I just want to pause there. The cell phone worked fine because in the reporting, there's been so much reporting that there's poor cell phone reception. And this is some of the disputes that we have about that night. Dad, feel free to jump in here because they're saying he met this young lady, Katie, and that he stayed back. According to the reporting, Katie is saying no. He said he was going to go with his friends. According to the reporting, the friends say, no, he left us his phone because there was no reception. Dad, have you found any consistencies? Have you spoken directly with any of his friends?
Well, the first inconsistency was you called me and tell me my son stayed on the island to talk to a girl. My son would never do that. That's not in his character. I didn't raise none of my kids to do that. The second thing is, you say he doesn't have his phone. He doesn't leave his phone. I will wake up sometimes in the morning and Nolan will have his phone here right in my face. And I'm waking up cussing and fussing like, boy, you don't get the camera on my face. And he just laughing and giggling and stuff like that. So that's twice. To me, there's two lies that he told me as a father. Like I said, we went on the island. And actually, a classmate of mine called me that morning as we were going out to the island with Nolan's coach. He's like 40 miles away. He calls and, hey man, I got the boat. Me and my boys, we're gonna go out there and help you look. I didn't call him, he called me. And we're gonna start on this end. I said, well, we're probably gonna start on the other end. So me, my wife, Coach Bramlett, and a high school classmate of mine were the only, we were the first ones out there looking. Like I said, we docked the boat, got out the boat, walked on the island. She had a whole conversation with her grandmother on the island, got back on the boat, went back around the island. I guess that would be the north side, facing the Gulf of Mexico. I get another phone call. So my phone worked fine. So this whole thing about not having phone service, I don't know. I don't know if it's the carrier or what, but ours worked fine. I think those around maybe 8 o'clock.
Yeah, because we finished up around.
Who was it, Jackson County or the?
Yeah, Jackson County Sheriff.
Finally showed up.
Yeah.
A couple of boats, they finally showed up. By that time, I was like, he's not out here. I was more focused that he was at someone's house.
That was the
So, that's where my hopes and feelings were. So we left. The county stayed out there. My friend, he stayed out there because he called. He was like, well, we're gonna stay out here a little bit longer. I said, okay, I appreciate it. So we leave. Then I would say maybe a couple hours later, my friend calls me back and he said, well, we're gonna give it and go, but He said, look, I can gas the boat back up, and if you want to go back out there, we can go back out there. I said, I don't want to go back out to the island. I have a feeling that he's not there, and I don't want to go back to the island. So he offered, he said, well, if you do, we can go right now. I said, don't worry about it, I appreciate you coming out there. But he said at that time that helicopters were out there, more Coast Guard, more people out there. So we get back on land, and as far as the keys, what was that night? Or was it?
That was that night.
That was the night, like, the call. Okay, let me back up. As far as getting the car back, after we gave our report to Jackson County, the sheriff department that night, we were trying to figure out who to get a report to. We had a friend in the family that located his phone. We wasn't there to get the phone, but apparently there was some kind of friction with getting his phone.
Yeah.
We don't know what the friction was.
So the phone and the key were at the same location, which was Jack's house.
Okay.
And again, all of these kids share their locations on Snapchat. And so she was like, hey, I can go pick his phone up, not thinking that his car is there, you know, which she stopped everything she was doing. Her and the boys, they went out. Like, we were all out searching for him that night. And yeah, like Elmore was saying, there was an issue, some type of friction. The cops ended up coming and they left. And so then kind of the same thing when we came to pick up the key, Elmore went up there asking for the key, didn't know where the key was, and all of a sudden we know where the key is.
But see, hold on. But see, this is another thing that bothered me too. When we got to the house, you know, it was some of his other friends were there, you know, and they were, you know, beating on the door like, "Where Nolan there? Where Nolan there?" You know, beating on the door trying to get in the house. So I walk up to the door and I'm calming them down, because for one, okay, you're allowed. Two, you're in these people's house. So if you tear these people's house up, that's gonna be a whole nother issue. I don't want y'all bothering it. And three, I need you guys to calm down, and I need them to kind of trust me as being an adult so I can get something out of them. So I get them out the house, and then Jax finally comes down the stairs, I guess in the room. Harold Minister, like he just woke up, whatever. I said, look, I'm Nolan's father. His car's outside. I need to get his car and all his personal effects that may be left over here. And he goes, oh man, Nolan was like my brother. I said, Nolan was like my brother. I said, well, if Nolan was like your brother, would you please go and get everything of his so I can get his car, I can go home. So he walks off. 2 or 3 minutes later, he come back. I don't see the keys. Okay. So I leave out the house, go back outside, stand by the car. During that time, one of the guys that was in the house, one of the other friends, he was on the phone with a girl who was apparently there with them earlier that day. And she was telling him that his keys was on top of the Xbox in his room. So he goes back up to the door by himself, and we're still out by the car. And lo and behold, here comes the keys. So now to me, you lied to me 3 times. I don't believe nothing that you tell me on out.
And this is Jax.
This is Jax.
And eventually he does give you the keys.
Yeah, eventually give me the keys.
But there was friction getting the keys.
Yes. So for one, you tell me my son is on left still on the island with a girl. 2, you have his phone. And 3, you don't give me the keys when I ask. I don't know any father who would believe, just if one of my friends did that, I'm gonna be cordial with you, but I'm gonna watch you. And
Ben, I want to ask you, because I'm hearing these 2 parents who essentially had to become search and rescue or law enforcement, looking for their own child with such a lack of urgency on behalf of law enforcement. Obviously, we're talking to Black journalists. We can't ignore the ugly racial history of Mississippi. I looked into the demographics of the Jackson County Sheriff Department. It's quite asymmetrical, but also just the general attitude and the lack of value when it comes to Black life. Does this sound like a normal process for when an 18-year-old goes missing to you? What holes have you seen in your looking into this case?
Tiffany, that was the question that Christine and Elmore had when they first called us. They wanted the truth of what happened to their 18-year-old son, Nolan Wells. And they had concerns whether they were going to get a fair and impartial investigation. And from that day to this one, it has been the same objective, to have truth, transparency, and find out what happened to Nolan. They said, we want a thorough investigation, because when they found Nolan, they expressed to me that the sheriff had already said no foul play.
Few hours.
And they was like, no, my son, he knows how to swim. Our son is a college athlete. Our son is in great shape. We don't believe that he just drowned and nobody knows nothing. Nobody saw nothing. I mean, there are about 300, 400 people on the island. And so that's what they were saying. We want to know what happened. We want truth. We want transparency. We don't want his death to be swept under the rug.
Well, just so to make sure the audience and the people watching at home know, so they did declare very quickly, as you're noting, that he drowned when his body was recovered on July 6th. Mom and Dad and you all know that he is a student athlete, able to swim. On July 4th on Horn Island, it was very crowded. Certainly the suggestion is someone would have seen a child in distress. There is going to be the convening of a grand jury. Now, the DA of this area, Angel Myers McElrath, is a very out loud, proud Republican. If there is a U.S. attorney appointed to this case, it will likely be a Trump appointee. I'm just curious, Ben, from you and Rev, I think we have to be very candid here. What concerns do you have about the racial animus that we are seeing so much of play in this case?
Well,
you or Rev, whoever.
All I'll say, and then defer to Rev, you want to believe that this is a child, that everybody is going to do their level best to find out what happened, so these broken-hearted parents will know what happened to their child. In time, we've seen Christine and the family be attacked just for asking questions. What happened to my child? Trying to say, no, we want to question this part of the investigation, that part of the investigation, because day one you said no foul play, but tell me now, what are you doing to be able to get us to the truth? And that is, it causes them sleepless nights. We talk at night. And so, trust but verify. We are trying to cooperate everything we can do to say, hey, we want to help, but we want you to give them a thorough investigation. We want you to do for him what you would do for your child.
Rev, I'm going to come to you in a sec, but you brought up something, Ben, about attacks. And certainly as journalists, we have a keen eye, and I have noticed that the narrative around this story has shifted to the threats that are going to the young men who was with Nolan. They've hired attorneys who previously represented Donald Trump in cases. They've gone on very MAGA-friendly podcasts. And I just want to make sure that we keep the main thing, the narrative to the victim. To the actual child who died. And I'm curious, Christine, if you can weigh in on what threats have you and your family experienced?
So there have been a big smear campaign, just not only professionally, but personally for me. And
they attacked your nursing license.
Yes, so it started out with 1-star reviews of people saying they saw me. My office verified that these were incorrect. And then it went so much as to someone contacted the Board of Nursing And then that opened the investigation for the professional misconduct. There was no evidence presented for that claim. And the investigator I spoke with, he said, we have to do our due diligence. I said, I understand it, I respect it. He was like, I'm sorry it's coming at this time. I was like, no, I get it, do what you have to do, because I know who I am. I know what kind of care I give to my patients. I know the relationship that we have. And I'm grateful that my patients, a lot of them are still trusting and loving in the care that they know they're going to get with me. And so these attacks are not going to, it's not going to break me. I have to find out. We have to find out what happened to Nolan. That is the only question we've ever asked. We've never blamed anyone. We've never tried to smear anyone. I know I heard something about the picture. That picture was sent to me because
This is a picture of him on the boat.
On the boat with the people.
Yes.
And what it was is they were like, the person was like, Miss Christine, the information is incorrect. This is what he was wearing. Because initially he was in black shorts, which again, that is the information I received from Warren, verbally and via text. When she sent me that picture, I was like, oh, completely different color. These are like a blue-gray short. So we had to correct that. But I'm grateful, we are grateful to all of you. Thank you for keeping our son's story alive. And thank you so much, Tiffany, for having us.
I think that's part of our assignment here, our responsibility. So often in newsrooms, we have to defend and define Black life and defend and define our own humanity. And so it makes a difference. The same way in other newsrooms, when you see someone and you feel like they're familiar, that so happens as they resegregate newsrooms and lay off Black journalists en masse, that goes away. So the people in this room have a keen interest in this story because they see your humanity, and that's what we center in this conversation. Rev, put this in historical context for us, because as I look at Mississippi, I don't have to tell you of all people some of the immediate thoughts that surface for us here.
Well, when I got the call from Ben Crump and he had the parents connected, and they told me the story, I'd not heard the story. I heard something about some in Mississippi. But when I heard the details, the thing that jarred me from a civil rights point of view, and I've been working, Ben has come National Action Network for 20-some years with a case, and then from there on and on and on. And if it's not a civil rights position, we don't get involved. When they told me that law enforcement said there is no foul play, that's a prejudgment. And I said, wait a minute. They said, the parents repeated to me in front, I said, they said it was, this 2 days after it happened. And how do you investigate and there's no foul play and you don't even know what happened yet? So that's what perked my interest. So I said that, well, we'll be involved and we'll help to the best of our ability. Talked another day or two. I said, y'all come to New York, we'll have a national press conference. That's how we broke the story. The first national press conference they did at our headquarters, National Action Network. And then all of a sudden, it was all of this attack for getting involved. And they asked me to do the eulogy. I said, we'll take care of the funeral. Tyler Perry called me and said, no, I'll take care of it. So the thing that bothered me, one, it was prejudgment. Second, the parents of the guys that were with him started talking about they was going to sue us for getting involved. And sue, I don't even know the kid's name. So you can't say I defame your son. I don't know your son's name. But I will say this on this stage, I want them to sue me first. And I'll tell you why. No, I'll tell you why. And National Action Network, you serve the papers, because I want to depose your son. If you sue, the plaintiffs are deposed. So rather than us depend on a Mississippi DA who's already had people saying it was no foul, let's go to civil court, any kind of court you want to go to, because you can't make this make sense. And direct to your point, Tiffany, as I said in the eulogy that I did, I don't know what happened. The parents never said they knew what happened. They never said it was racial. I don't know it was racist, but they don't know it wasn't racist. You don't know what happened. So why are you prejudging it unless something is there you don't want out? Second thing is, and I said this to Elmer and Kristen, I had hurt my knee. I had torn my meniscus. And when I tore it, I told Ben the truth. I did it working out one morning, but I told them I got it because I was on my knees praying too much. But anyway, when they took me to say they may have to do surgery, the first thing they said is, well, we got to get your medical history from your primary doctor. I said, okay. So I said in the eulogy that I don't know what happened, but I got your history in Mississippi. And the history tells me black boy go out with 3 white kids come back. There's a blurred story on what happened. Now y'all all hostile and all upset. Didn't have the keys, but then you had the keys. Some about this don't make sense given your history. And I'm gonna stay on this until we find out what happened. It may be nothing, but we're not gonna leave that up to chance with people that are distorted. We gonna stay on this case. And lastly, since they want to talk about lawsuits, one of the things tying your morning together, Tiffany, they may come back, as you suggested, playing right-wing politics with this, with the local prosecutor, maybe even with the federal people. But if we have a change in January and there is a Democratic House, I said that if Hakeem becomes the speaker, he needs to have the chair of judiciary, subpoena them to the Judiciary Department, testify. No, that's what this vote means. We need to have a check and balance of government so that we got somewhere to go. We can't depend to go to Trump's Justice Department. So we need to really mobilize so people like these 2 parents can protect their children.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you laid out such a great example on how the tentacles of white supremacy cast such a dark shadow over almost every aspect of what your parents went through. I know that there's so many more questions that I have, and I'm sure the audience has. As all my broadcasters know, I have an IFB, and they've been telling me to rap for about 10 minutes. We wanted. It was my pleasure to go over time, and not only my pleasure, my responsibility to give you all a platform to share your story. I think it's so important, and I think this is the responsibility that the Black journalists in this room take very seriously and will carry with them back to their newsrooms where they may be the only, or back to their platforms where they are building reach or have a wide reach. So I thank you all for sharing your time and being so open. There will be a press conference. There was an autopsy, a second autopsy that Ben Crump initiated that I believe Colin Kaepernick helped to fund. There were questions around that, and so please, I encourage credentialed media to please go to the press conference, and the access for credentialed media will be on the NABJ app for more information. So I don't want you all to think I didn't have more questions, but I passed the baton to you all to go ask all the additional questions. And I just want to thank all of you all sincerely for being here, and I want to thank you, NABJ, for being such an attentive audience.
As his family awaits the autopsy results, the independent autopsy results, speculation of what happened to the 18-year-old grows. Brian Trasher from the United Cajun Navy, a volunteer organization that assisted in the search for Nolan, told CBS News he was flying a plane over Horn Island when Nolan's body was found. Trasher said that with all the crowds out in the water that day, he finds it hard to believe no one would have noticed a distressed swimmer.
Yeah, I was told that there was a boat he thought he was going to get on that was leaving and that he might have been trying to swim to it. The only problem I have with that story is that if the people in the boat knew he was trying to swim to it and they saw him getting carried off with the current, they would have known about it. They would have been able to react to it. Not only that, even if that wasn't the case, if he went into the water at all and became distressed, it was so crowded that day that it seems hard to believe that nobody would have noticed a distressed swimmer in the water. So again, it's a story I was told. There's a lot of reasons why I question it. What I do know is that he went out there with a number of boys that has been his regular friend group since he was young. They were ready to leave at about 3 o'clock. They told him it's time to go. I was told he had started talking to a young lady, and he wanted to hang back and keep talking to her, and that he would believe that he could get another ride. Now, some people have been criticizing, saying, "Oh, you never leave your friend." Well, technically, they didn't leave him. He requested to stay behind. And if you know anything about how these barrier islands are and how they're used recreationally, people go out there on one boat, they might come back on another boat. Like it's almost like a community ferry system, because not everybody has a boat, and you might jump on with another group of friends, whatnot. What we have to find out is, after his friends left, who was Nolan in contact with? Who did he believe he was supposed to get a ride back with? Did that boat give him a ride? Did he get on any boat? How did he end up in the water? Did he wade into the water on his own? Did he get on a boat and fall off? That's what we have to find out. On those particular islands, you're not allowed to like camp out or be there after dark. And so the Rangers, as it gets to be sunset, they start running around looking for, if there's still any boaters or people out there saying, "Hey guys, it's time to go home." So I would not think that Nolan was just wandering around the island when it got dark. My instinct tells me that he got off the island, either tried to swim off or got off on a boat, and somehow ended up in the water. But because of the Rangers' presence, I don't think it's likely that he just like spent the night on the island or was there after dark.
Again, we'll wait for the autopsy results. Folks, we continue to seek answers into the mysterious death of Nolan Wells, the 18-year-old African-American who was found dead in Mississippi after he went out boating with a group of white friends on July 4th. Independent autopsy is being done on his body. The Mississippi officials say they continue this investigation. And again, we continue to ask the critical questions. What happened? What happened to this young man, and how did he end up dead? Joining us right now is Christine and Elmore Wansley, the parents of Nolan Wells, also the attorney, Ben Crump. I'm glad to have all three of you here. Certainly our condolences go out to you, Christine and Elmore, on the loss of your son.
Thank you.
I want to be clear in terms of trying to understand this timeline. What time did Nolan go out with his friends? What time did they go out boating on July 4th?
So that was sometime in the morning. I don't have the exact time. I do still have his information up on the Life 360, but it was earlier in the morning on July the 4th.
So, and so he said, "Hey, July 4th, we're going out for the day boating." Was this something that he had previously done with his group of friends?
Yes, it was, and there was no issues, and my son came home.
So, did he indicate for you what time they're going to be coming back?
No, like his dad has stated in multiple interviews, it was his last hurrah before reporting back to school. So we were just, going to let him have that time to really just decompress because, football can be a lot on you. Especially too, he was a student athlete, so he wasn't just, doing one thing. He was having to manage both.
So the evening arrives. All of a sudden, it's getting darker. You have not heard back from your son. What then happened? What time did you and your husband begin to get concerned when you had not heard from or seen Nolan?
So honestly, we got concerned when we got the phone call. There have been times when Nolan has come in later because he and his friends are, watching movies or again at some type of party. So, that wasn't necessarily uncommon. But when I saw his friend call me, my heart dropped because I knew something was wrong. His friends do not call me like that.
What time? What time was
That
that when
was
the friend
around,
called?
that was, I think, 11:07 is when he called. And he
So
said,
he leaves that morning. Go
so
ahead.
he
Go
left
ahead. I'm sorry.
the evening before. So him and his friends, they all stayed the night at one of the other friends' house.
Okay, so July 4th was that Saturday. So they stayed the night with some friends on Friday. So y'all last saw Nolan on Friday, and then he goes out with them on
Yes.
Saturday. Around 11:07 p.m. on Saturday, then you get this phone call. We've heard about them having his cell phone. When did they turn over his cell phone to you and your husband?
So they actually gave the cell phone to my friend. Whenever I got the call that Nolan was missing, I was like, you know what? Let me call my friend Tashima because her sons, Jalen and Javon, Nolan actually those are the guys he actually grew up with, right? Like from playing City League on up. We were very familiar with Jalen and Javon and their mom. Again, they're friends of ours. And so I called her and I was like, hey, have you seen Nolan? Can you ask the boys? Have they talked to him? And she was like, you know what? And the boys, of course, they were like, no. So they're pulling up their location tracker on Snapchat because they all follow each other. And they, were able to help pin. I'm pulling mine up on Life 360. So between the two, we were able to determine where his phone was, which is not where his car was. So the car and the phone were in two separate locations. Elmore and I were trying to, after we got off the phone with Tashima, because she was like, hey, look, don't worry about it. I'll go get it. We went ahead and started calling authorities to see who we needed to file the missing persons report with.
And when you got the phone,
Elmore, I have. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ben.
no,
Go ahead.
you asked about the phone. It was important when they got the phone.
Mm-hmm. So it took a while. It took a little bit before the phone was handed over to my friend. And then we did meet up. And of course, we met up soon after. We filed the police report finally. And then she was on her way back towards Ocean Springs. So we met up at the second house to pick the car up, which is where he stayed overnight.
Elmore,
the only thing I was going to point out was...
Yeah, go ahead, Ben.
The only thing I was going to point out that is very important, we believe, some of the Snapchat messages seem to have been deleted and some text messages seem to have been deleted. And we believe that could prove very relevant.
Elmore, I've raised 6 nieces, and first got the nieces when they were as early as a year and a half, and raised them all the way through. They were even now my twin nieces, and they're 22 years old. I don't know many kids today who they're never without these. And did that cause you suspicion that, and when you think about your son, was his phone always with him? Was he always on his phone? Was he always using his phone?
Yes.
You talked about, Christine, you talked about the life tracker. I would assume, just like my nieces, his hand was attached to the phone.
Yes.
All the time.
His hand was attached to his phone all the time. His hand and his phone was always in my face messing with me. So he wouldn't go nowhere without that phone. He wouldn't give someone else his phone and go off a whole nother way. It just wasn't in his character. We didn't raise him like that. For him to not stay with the people that he came with. We taught him that, like, if you go with someone, you stay with them. You go with them, you leave with them. You don't go off. You don't go off. You don't split from the group chasing a girl. There's girls back where you at. There's girls everywhere. So she's not the only one. You can find another girl. So I constantly drilled in his head to always stay with the group. Always just be mindful of your surroundings. And you know,
all of the kids really.
I constantly had those conversations with him until it's like I could tell he was getting tired of Dad, you're nagging, but I kept saying, son, one day you're gonna thank me for me nagging you like this, because you're gonna say, Dad was right. And when that day comes, I want you to pick that same phone up and call me and tell me I'm right. So I say it's just hard for us to believe that he would choose to stay on an island without any kind of form of communication.
And see, that's the thing that jumps out at me. Again, knowing how young folks are today, if he says, okay, I'm gonna go with somebody else, they don't leave this. They don't, like, that's no, hey, be sure, give me my bag, make sure I have my phone, and being, that's what immediately jumps out, that he's separated from his phone. It takes so long for his parents to be notified. And then when you said it appears as if some items have been deleted, obviously people don't realize text messages cannot be deleted permanently. Have you already communicated with the cell phone company to be able to pull those records?
Yes, we are reaching out to experts to try to not only retrieve the deleted Snapchats, but the deleted messages, because we know on the video rolling that's been circulating all around the internet, we know there was some kind of argument where you heard Nolan saying, give me my freaking phone. What are you freaking doing? And then for him to not come back, but his three friends who were in the boat with him all come back with his phone, and he comes back a couple of days later on the shore dead. It doesn't add up, and it makes it hard for the sheriff to say, well, there's no foul play that we found. Well, that's foul play there. When you're talking about an argument over a phone, and then they take his phone and leave him on an island, it makes you scratch your head and say, this isn't adding up.
Have you, Christine, and first, have y'all had any? Did you have any conversations, any discussions with these? And was it 3 young men who went with your son, or was it more?
I think pretty sure there were probably more present. 3 of them have reached out. And I know, and I've been sitting here kind of trying to go through all the facts and everything, because again, we're still grieving. Like it hasn't even been that long since our son, 4 days since he's been found. But I think maybe two or three parents have reached out. And I'm just, I'm in a mindset right now where I'm trying to protect my family. I'm trying to protect my peace, make sure my husband's okay. And it's a lot, because social media is just so nasty with what this pain that we're going through. Like, they think it's a joke, and it's horrible. And I pray that they never have to go through anything like this.
That's it.
Unfortunately, and Ben knows this, I've had to interview far too many of his clients. I always say this is a fraternity or sorority. that no one wants to be a member of. Um,
Absolutely.
what is so difficult here again is sort of like there's this fog, if you will, when you said that they've reached out. Um, the only explanation given was that, and did it come from his friends that he just decided to stay? That was it. They didn't convey anything else.
Yes, that was it. They said that that he wanted to stay and hang out with this girl named Katie, and also, and this was the initial conversation, me being alerted to him being missing. It was, oh well, Katie's also missing, but we don't know who she is. Like that was our first time kind of seeing her, type of thing. So then when I'm going to social media,
wow,
I'm coming from a place with information that was given to me by people that were there.
Ben, and you mentioned the video circulating. There appeared to be a lot of boats in that area, and they were shooting video. In terms of this investigation, are you troubled by the lack of urgency that you're hearing from this sheriff, who's just sort of being somewhat nonchalant about what took place with Nolan Wells 4 days ago, or 6 days ago, if you will?
Yeah, Roland, we're very concerned because from the very beginning, his response was that, well, we don't think it was foul play. Well, how do you know? You haven't even investigated anything. And that video certainly makes you think that there's something that doesn't pass the smell test. And the fact that you have the young lady who said that Nolan said he was going to get back on the boat with the boys, and then the boys said, no, Nolan told them that he was going to stay with the girl. Which one is it? Somebody must not be telling the truth. And again, we cannot overstate it enough. What 18-year-old teenager says, I'm going to stay behind on the island and don't ask for their cell phone?
Well, especially when you look at the map that shows the distance this island from from where they came from. I do want to ask Christine, her husband, is here. So the photos that we've been showing, were those photos taken on that day, or was it a previous boating trip?
We think on that day.
That was taken on that day, specifically the one with all three of them. Whenever I had made the post asking for information, there was a young girl who reached out to me and she said, hey, Miss Christine, I know that in the report it's stating that he had black shorts on, but she was like, he actually had blue shorts. And those are two very different colors. Like you can't get those two confused. And so what she did is she's like, I'm going to send you these pictures to show you so, I could use to show everybody like this is actually the color of the shorts he was wearing. Because she was concerned too
So they had sent those photos to her, or had they posted
No,
those
these
photos
are
on
pictures
social
that
media
she took. No, she took the pictures.
Okay, so she was.
Yeah, she took those herself and she sent them to me.
She was out there.
Yeah, she was out there.
Got it. Obviously, it has been 4 days since your son's body was found. 7 days since you last saw him. Are you concerned with the pace of this investigation? I would also ask Ben. I mean, do you believe? I mean, initial reports saying that the young men have been questioned. No one obviously has been taken into custody. Any thoughts and concerns about that? The pace of this investigation. That here we are, it's 4 days later, and there still are so many unanswered basic questions.
Yeah, I know the family is very concerned. That's why they wanted an independent autopsy done, Roland Martin. And so the body was flown from Mississippi to Washington, D.C., because they want to have a doctor do an exam of his body that had no connections, no influence from the law officials in the state of Mississippi, because it's inescapable that, you know, Roland, had the roles been reversed and you had 3 young black men and a young white man on a boat, and the white man dies or is killed, you will see a completely different investigation, Roland Martin. I mean, that especially, and you got his cell phone, and you back on the island, and you leave him on the island. I mean, it's so many things that says you all are not doing a zealous investigation on behalf of the family of Nolan Wells. We want the same kind of investigation that you would have did if the roles were reversed for a young white man for our son too.
Absolutely.
Elmore, it has to be. I listened to you as you talked about your son felt like you were badgering him when all those questions. And the reality is, fathers and mothers desperately want to protect their children, want to provide them with as much cover as possible. Um, and so, as you think about those many conversations, um, you absolutely believe that you gave your son so much information that you don't believe for a second that he would decide on a whim just to make some crazy decision and just go off with some other people he had no idea, didn't know who they were at all.
I believe, like, I believe I gave my son, like I said, enough information to not do that. He had too much at stake. He had a plan for his life. He knew what he wanted to do. He knew what he had to do coming up that following Monday, which was get down to business so he can get on with his life and get his future started. So for someone to tell me that Nolan decided to stay on the island to chase a girl, I do not believe you. No one is going to get me to believe that. Not one bit. No, I can't believe that because he wasn't raised like that.
Just a couple.
I had him super focused on what he wanted to do. He was finally buying into what I was talking about as far as sports and business, and really taking it serious and understanding that if he wanted it, he had to put in the work.
Just a couple of questions left. Christine, you talked about how nasty folks are on social media. It has to be extremely painful and difficult for you and your husband to see people who you don't know, who don't know you, who don't know your son, question you allowing him to be around white teens, questioning how you raised your son.
What I would say to that is the amount of love and support that we've received from our local community, people outside of our community, is, and even his friends, it's a testament to his character. It's a testament to us as parents. And this is the thing, I would never, and my husband the same, we would never tell our child, any of our children, you are not allowed to associate with this person over here because of the color of their skin, or because this person over here is purple. Absolutely not. And just the way Nolan's heart was, he was a friend to everybody. Like, he was just, his heart was that big. So, like, I don't care. Because at the end of the day, I know we did everything we could as parents, raised our children as best as we could. We have always told them to be kind, caring, and respectful to others, no matter who they were. And that's the way we were raised. So if anyone has an issue with that, then that seems like that's a you problem, not a us problem.
Ben, final question for you. Have you gotten any indication? First of all, Ben, who's leading this investigation? Is it the sheriff or is it the Mississippi Bureau of Investigation?
I think at this time it's still the sheriff, because the sheriff is the one who's making the statements. The sheriff in Jackson County, Mississippi.
Do you want to see the MBI take this over?
I want to see somebody lead the investigation who's going to do so zealously. We are in a ferocious search for the truth. I mean, with every day that goes by, that makes it a little more daunting, a little more challenging. So time is of the essence. I mean, we don't want not one more sleepless night to go by just because they don't have answers. We know they're never going to have peace because, you know, they baby, as they talked about, bought their family so much peace. And so there's a void in their hearts and in their families forever. But let's at least give them the transparency that they deserve. As Christine said, any parent, black, white, brown, or red, you would want answers. If somebody came to you and said, we went out with him, we left him, and now he's dead. No, we got to get answers, Roland Martin. We must get answers.
Christine Elmore Wansley, again, our condolences go out to you. It is absolutely difficult, and as you said, it's even more difficult when you're trying to grieve the loss of your son and you're having to do interviews and, frankly, put the pressure on officials to get answers as to what has taken place. And so I appreciate both of you joining us. I appreciate Ben Crump, you being here as well. And certainly we've been covering this story from day one, as we always do. We're going to continue to cover this story because it needs to be told, and we need answers as to what took place to 18-year-old Nolan Wells. Thanks a bunch.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Roland Martin.
Thanks a lot. Quickly go to my panel here. Candace, when we talk about evidence collection, what is bothersome here is that these boys come back, they call the mother at 11 p.m., they don't get the phone until the next day. Anybody who understands investigations, you are most concerned about the destruction of evidence. In this case here, we're dealing with water. And so now, again, you don't know. Did they change clothes? Now you're talking about, where was there a fight? Scratches on their body. What kind of interviews took place from the authorities? There's so many people. There's so many things here at play that could determine not knowing what actually happened.
Yeah. And you said the key word there, and that is the evidence, because the evidence begins right now. And if there are any lawsuits, that's what this part and this time is for, to collect the evidence and make sure that people are held accountable so that evidence plays out well in court, whether it's a wrongful death suit, a negligence suit, or any other criminal action that comes down the line, which there probably will be. Now, I'm not sure, and this is a question that I wanted to hear from them, and maybe you know this, if any of those young men that were with him did get legal representation. I've heard it. I'm not sure but to search for an attorney and not be as part of the search party is ridiculous. And that is evidence. And that is evidence that it goes against any story that they have. At this point, it seems to me, I think about it this way, Roland, when you want to punish a child that's 18 years old or 8 years old, the first thing that you do is you take away that phone. And we know that there was confirmation from Crump. There was, audible. You could hear audio that was confirmed that was Nolan, that he did say, give me back my freaking phone. Why were they punishing him by keeping that phone away from him? There's something that somebody is hiding. This is what we know. And it all has to do with that phone. The fact that they went home, sat on that phone, that a friend of hers had to go retrieve the phone. Nobody offered that phone up? Are you kidding me? This is all the evidence building that is not going to play well for those kids in court, which is why one of the kids' mothers, that judge whose name escapes me, that's why she started her evidence and seeding of it now. That my child, he's been cooperating with everyone and everything is fine. And maybe I canceled my Facebook account, but don't take it personally. People out there are mean. Everybody is pulling together their evidence, and that's where we are. And it does not look good. And it is because of that phone. It is because of that. That phone is telling the story and is going to tell the story in court.
Matt.
Yeah, I want to stay on that same thought. So I have literally proven a murder case off of deleted text messages from a cell phone. The police may not have thought they had probable cause to search the phone, but phones get dumped. So what people don't know is even if you delete messages or delete data on your phone, there are various levels to the phone where things are saved. So like I said, I literally proved a murder case off of deleted text messages. There's a lot of evidence surely in that phone. And there are a couple things I don't understand in this case. The first thing I don't understand is if you have a video that's contemporaneous with their time on the island with Nolan, and they come back with his phone and he's protesting them having his phone, you have a theft. So how you don't issue an arrest warrant immediately for the theft, how you don't decide to dump the phone, how you don't send an exigency search warrant to Snapchat, to social media, to the phone provider. I mean, they do that all the time. When somebody's missing and they have reason to believe there's been foul play, the police routinely do that, and the phone companies and other providers have a means whereby they can get them information in an exigent circumstance. Here, on the 4th of July, this young man goes missing. The family realizes he's missing. It seems to me the police had a number of things they could have done to truly investigate this and preserve that evidence. And, Ben Crump is one of the best in the country, so I suspect his team is going to do this. But the absolute first thing I would do is get a private forensic examiner on that phone. I would do a logical dump, a physical dump, find what is in that phone. And there may certainly be things that were deleted, right? And then even if those things are innocuous, right? Even if they're text messages that don't have anything to do about the conflict, then you have a question of chain of custody. Okay, y'all had this phone for X number of hours before it was provided to his family, and there's something that was deleted that was sent after the time Nolan had the phone, or rather deleted after the time Nolan had the phone. It stands to reason you got tampering with evidence. So maybe, this is something the Mississippi Bureau of Investigation will have to get into, but police officers do these things routinely, and I think what this might be is a situation where they want to take the path of least resistance and assume there's no foul play, despite the fact that they had incontrovertible evidence that this young man was not only in a conflict, but that they had expensive property of his, which they would normally call a theft. So how they didn't go down that road, I don't understand. Hopefully Ben and his team are able to develop some of that, and that evidence has been preserved despite presumably someone trying to delete it or otherwise obscure it.
Well, Michael, what's so bothering for me is for a sheriff to say, we don't believe there was foul play. I'm sorry. An 18-year-old, extremely healthy young man goes on an island with friends, doesn't come back. They come back. He's missing. And I'm sorry, that's called doubt. That's called suspicion. And so you don't just come out and just make that kind of statement. That raises questions as to the thoroughness or the quality of the investigation that this sheriff is going to actually conduct.
Yeah, Roland, I agree. I think it's premature to say there's no foul play suspected. You could just say we haven't been able to conclude that. at this point in the investigation. The other, so I
or you
watched
just
the press
simply,
conference.
or you simply say this, or you just simply say this is under investigation.
This is
but
under
you don't
investigation. Yeah.
give a you don't give a definitive statement like we don't believe that was foul play.
Right, right. So I agree, Roland. I watched the press conference today. I also saw the interview this morning on Good Morning America that Nolan's parents did along with Ben Crump, and I watched the interview on CBS this morning. And I have like 15 questions, but I'm only going to ask 2. So I heard you, Roland, say that someone called the parents at 11 p.m. Was that to say we have Nolan's phone, or what was that call regarding?
Well, the mother answered that. She said that the call she got was that Nolan had not come back with him.
Right. Okay. Now, one of the questions I had is when the father went to go retrieve the phone, the boy or the man or the young man he retrieved the phone from said Nolan was like a brother to me.
No, the father.
And
No. The father didn't go retrieve the phone. The mother said a friend of hers was the one who went to go and retrieve the phone.
Okay. I misunderstood it at the press conference today. Okay.
Yeah. Well, again, I didn't see that. Here's the deal. I didn't see the news conference. I'm just simply saying what the mother just said, and I just interviewed her. So in terms of, so I don't know that. But so the bottom line is here. Okay. Clearly, they're not giving answers as to what actually is taking place. It has been 4 days since his body was found. 7 days, 7 days since they last saw him. 6 days since July 4th. And it's clear folks are clamming up. And so I would hope the sheriff is doing a real investigation. And the problem is, if he's not, for every day that you get away from this, the problem that you have is you have a lack of evidence. As we said, evidence could be destroyed, evidence washed away, all that sort of stuff. And that's really what is of great concern. Folks, the investigation into the death of 19-year-old Nolan Wells is ongoing, and increasing speculation online is focused on one of the families linked to the July 4th boating trip. Lee Cole, a judge on Mississippi's 16th Chancery Court, the stepmother of Warren Hudson, one of the white teens who accompanied Wells on the trip to Horn Island before he disappeared. Warren was interviewed by the Jackson County Sheriff's Department and cooperated fully. He saw Nolan last at around 3 p.m. on July 4th. They left around 4:30 p.m. when the boat was taking on water and they had an issue with the bilge pump. Nolan made a decision to stay on the island and return inland later with another group of friends. This still, Robert, is a rather strange story. So here she says that they left around 3. Nolan chose to come back with another group of friends. Okay, where are those friends? And also, we've seen the social media video. There were a lot of boats in that area. If y'all have the video, play it, where they recorded Nolan arguing with several white male teens. Didn't have his cell phone when he went missing. His parents, Christine and Elmore Wansley, now have the phone. Okay, Rebecca, for the life of me, I don't know any Gen Z that is not always with their phone. I'm Gen X. My phone's always with me. They are never not on my person. And so it's like, okay, so if he decided to stay back with another group of friends, he wouldn't have his phone? Why would his phone go back with the first group of friends?
I think it's very unusual that a young person, any person, would be separated from their phone, especially if they were that far out.
Yeah, Nolan Wells went on a boat with friends on the 4th of July and out to, I believe it's Horn Island off the Mississippi coast. He was the only Black person in this group. He never made it back to shore with them. Days later, his body was recovered on the island.
Mhm. His family, supported by attorney Ben Crump, Reverend Al Sharpton, and millions around the country, have been begging for a transparent investigation ever since because the story just keeps shifting. And because there's still no real answers for why he was left behind on the island, why his phone was never found with him, what happened in those missing hours. Like we're still looking for all of that.
Yeah, and Nolan case doesn't just exist in isolation, right? In the last year alone, we've seen disturbing numbers of Black and brown people found hanging from trees in public places. From Mississippi to Georgia to New York, each one quickly labeled a suicide, each one leaving families and communities with more questions than peace.
Right. And it's not to say that mental health in the Black community, but the specifics of Black people hanging from trees at this time, white supremacy is on the rise, needs to be really addressed, and the quickness to label it suicide. But at the same time, thousands of Black children and adults missing every single year with almost no media coverage at all. Even in the Nolan Wells case, traditional media spaces have not been covering it. And there's this underlying truth that Black life is too often treated as disposable. Black death is often treated as unremarkable.
When we think about cases like Nolan Wells or the recent hanging deaths across the country, or the missing Black children that are happening in places like my hometown, Philadelphia, to places like Chicago, from your reporting, what do you think typically goes wrong first, but both with how law enforcement responds, but also the lack of media coverage in those stories?
I think that it starts with the media. I personally just see that like the media has such a big role to play in how the world responds to certain situations, including law enforcement. And so I do believe that a lack of media coverage is what leads even local law enforcement to not take cases seriously. And then that delay leads to families never getting answers for what happened to their loved ones.
So true.
I did a Substack essay when Nolan Wells was first reported missing about the lack of media coverage to his story, and I spotlighted like how this situation, if there's anything to learn from it, proves how much local news really matters because it is small local newsrooms that make stories like this catch fire so that there can be some sort of fight for justice, for answers. And there's one case that always sticks with me of this young 22-year-old Black woman who disappeared at 8 months pregnant and
Wow.
was never found. This was February 2024. And that sticks with me because I just can't imagine her family and going, from the joy and excitement of welcoming a new life into the family to losing that, as well as the young woman that you were raising. I felt so badly for her father. And so with a case like that, I'm like, how do we never, it's been 2.5 years, how do we never figure out what happened? You
Yeah,
know?
yeah,
So the cases like that are just devastating to me.
yeah. And I think to your point, it's because there's like no closure, but it's also just like after so long, you really found nothing. And I think it begs the question of just like, what are these law enforcement agencies doing, and what resources are they actually lobbying? And sometimes I do wonder if our expectations are skewed because of the true crime television, and we think that investigators are investing more energy across the board. But just for families who are going through this in real time, what does an actual thorough trustworthy investigation look like? What should that look like versus what they actually get?
I think what families actually get is what we're seeing happen with Nolan Wells in the age of digital media is when someone first goes missing. Like I know last night there was a young Black girl who was reported missing near Knoxville, Tennessee.
Yeah.
And that is what families have to do immediately is turn to social media. And what happens is either social media ignores it or the polar opposite is that it becomes this like frenzy of like misinformation because everyone is now there's too many cooks in the kitchen and everyone is trying to play a part and typically that only happens with stories that the internet deems juicy enough to care about, unfortunately. And so I think what needs to happen is that these investigations need to stay local, and they need to be hyper focused on real information. I just think there has to be a middle ground before we get to social media. I know that it's really important in the early stages, but I think we need to, I don't know what everyone's opinion is about in regard to law enforcement, but I think that if we're going to turn to law enforcement, I think we need to have some sort of trust in those systems. Otherwise, I'm not sure why we turn to them. I think we should start working on an alternative to finding our loved ones when they get lost.
No,
But
absolutely, because
as
the
someone who is not an expert in missing persons cases, right? These are
yeah.
stories that I cover and I see, but so many of them have the same end result. So I can't tell you from my own perspective what a good investigation should look like, but I can point out where they go wrong. And it's typically when the family loses control of the story and it becomes a narrative that everyone else is running with.
Yeah, no, that's so true. I feel like the hundreds that we've seen reported online, like in our flag through like social media posts, I can only imagine the ones that don't make it to social media because their families are just not sophisticated enough to post it online, right? Or that their story, to your point, isn't juicy enough for folks to care about it or for it to gain traction. And I think that's one of the most frustrating things about stories like Nolan, because imagine if the family hadn't said anything and they just took the word of his friends as that they left him on an island randomly, which I don't know any friends, my friends wouldn't do that. But the inconsistencies, the disparities that we continue to see in regards to the timeline or the red flags, right, that are coming from these young people's stories or the stories of the attorneys. What have been some of the disparities or the red flags that you've seen in the timeline in your own reporting so far?
I think because there's been so many updates, I say, because they're coming from people and sources that we can't 100% verify.
Yeah.
It's become very muddied. And so I know that last night CBS released a report where they used GPS data that was given to them by a official department in Mississippi that has to do with the waters down there, you know, how boats travel. Forgetting the name of that agency, but they provided them with the GPS data of how that boat moved. And so they confirmed, you know, the boat left Ocean Springs at 9:56 a.m. They arrived at the island at 11:10 a.m. They left the island at 4:31 p.m. That data does verify what the group of, you know, young men are saying about what time they left the island. I'm curious to know how they're going to prove that Nolan was not on that boat. And if they can prove that, I'm still not sure how anyone is accounting for the fact that they're saying they last saw Nolan at 3 p.m. and they left the island at 4:31 p.m. This is not, you know, I'm not sure if anyone has like looked at Google images of you know, Horn Island or watched the videos,
I
but this
have,
isn't
yeah.
like this isn't Cancun, you know, this isn't like everyone this is a sandbar. It's called an island, but it's a sandbar. It's not huge, right? So you can do that lap. Where was Nolan in the 90 minutes between when you're claiming you last saw him and when you actually left the island? Because 90 minutes is a lot of time. Especially like I know, you know, people who work in media always joke that like that 30-second break that you get, 30
Yeah.
seconds is a lot of time. So 90 minutes is a lot of time. So where was he?
Yeah, and to your point too, I think that's one of the most frustrating things is why did y'all have his phone? Why did you have his
I will
phone? And
say
now that the mother is
I
saying that there
don't
was
think
things taken away from his phone or stuff like
right.
that.
I don't think it's insane because I've, again, and this is something that I need to be 100% sure about. I would say I'm about 90% sure, but I've seen that his best friend Javon also left the island. He was on a different boat, but he also left his phone with Nolan's phone on the other boat. Like I don't think I personally do not think it's crazy that everyone apparently leaves their phone over on the boats.
Okay.
That
Yeah.
you know, when
And
I
I
go to
do,
the beach, I do hide my phone in like a bag and leave it somewhere so
yeah.
that the sun doesn't kill it. So like
Yeah.
I'm curious to know when did they notice that they had it?
Yeah.
That is the big question. You know, I had seen some of the snippets from Christine's interview and also some of your coverage because you've been at a lot of these presses, you've had conversations with the family, and so seeing your quotes that come from it. And she had said on multiple occasions that she did not get the phone back immediately, and then she also to clarify something that was said earlier, that she had to she had to reach out to ultimately get his things back. That it wasn't like someone, was like, hey, we have his stuff, we haven't been able to get in touch with him, so here it is. Like she had to go chasing after some of his things. Did I misunderstand that, or?
So Christine Wonsley, Nolan's mother, tracks Nolan via Life 360, which is a GPS app. And so when she checked Nolan's Life 360 location, it showed that he was somewhere else. It showed that he was on land, but it showed that he was somewhere else. I'm not certain, like she has not clarified where it said she was. It could be that like it showed him on a random street and she's not sure, what it was saying. But so Nolan's friend Warren was the one who called Christine at 11:07 p.m. that night, according to her, and said, "Have you heard from Nolan? No one has seen him, and he's not with us." And then that friend also is the one who called the Coast Guard, reportedly. Christine then reached out to her friend, whose son, Jalen, is Nolan's best friend. Her son said, I haven't seen Nolan. The last time I saw him was on the island. He's not with me. He said, let me check his Snapchat location because they all share their locations on Snapchat. So then he checked and it said that it was at someone's house. And so when he looked at the location, not only was Nolan, I don't know if anyone is familiar with like the Snapchat map and what it looks like,
Yeah.
but like it shows you on a map and it shows like your avatar. And so what he and his mother said is that when they looked at the map, it was not just Nolan, but it was like a bunch of people were in this one concentrated area. So then they traveled to that house and they knocked on the door, and that is when they learned, like that's when they got the phone. And so I don't think that the friend, from what I'm trying to connect, because I will be honest and say the interviews, no one who has interviewed the family has taken the opportunity to in my opinion clearly clarify the timeline of events. I
Yeah.
think that it's been bits and pieces here and there, and so it's up to everyone else to try and like string them together. So I don't think that the friend who called Christine was at that house or had no, like I don't think that, I think that was a friend who was at the beach and is separate from the group of people who had Nolan's phone. um that's what I am surmising from the story that I've heard.
Okay, that makes sense.
But I
A
am
lot.
curious to know, and I did reach out to Christine, but unfortunately, what has happened is that because Ben Crump is now, and it appears to be prioritizing national media, it's very hard to get answers now. Whereas in the early days, I was getting confirmation in quotes rather quickly.
Yeah.
I this week like re-downloaded Snapchat and like did an experiment where I was having my friend track me and I was changing the settings and shit. So like Snapchat does not track your location in the background,
It only
unless
tracks when you post, right?
it tracks it if the app is open,
Oh, okay.
or it tracks it in the background. Like even if you like quit the app, it'll track your location in real time if you have that setting saved. And so I'm curious to know what Nolan's location services settings were on his phone. Was it set to always track my phone so that even if Snapchat hadn't been used, then okay, it makes sense that it tracks him wherever it goes? Or is it set to only when I'm using the app? Because if that's the case, then that means that someone opened the phone at that house.
Right. Okay. And these are all such important questions. And I know that you said earlier, you're not an expert on investigations, but these are the sorts of questions that we do want to believe that law enforcement are asking themselves and converging on and getting to these things. It was just devastating to hear the father saying we would have been out there on the water sooner, but we didn't have access to a boat. And it just being like, why does it fall on individual families to have access to these hulking things that are very expensive to get the searches going, or it takes the United Cajun Navy to get out there, and if you can't get any of that to happen fast enough through social media or law enforcement, then you just don't get access to it. But I appreciate the questions that you're asking. I hope that national media is really taking because I will say something that's been happening on social media is there's a lot of anger at what seems to be, what's perceived to be the white friends and their family members like closing off. And that could be just a perception and social media running with, but there's this perception of like people are not working with the investigation, and so now the family has to get a separate autopsy and they have to do their own things with other.
Yeah, it's like why in your social media accounts, why isn't the response to think of how can I be supportive in the family, getting clarity so that way our community can move forward and like being able to mourn him versus like this investigation.
And is that something that you feel like from your interviews, you're like, oh, that's blown up on social media? Do you feel like there is a closing of ranks?
I think that it is a result of social media. And I was talking to someone this week. I'm going to Mississippi tomorrow. And I am trying to get as close to Nolan Wells' inner circle as I possibly can. But I'm also going to visit Horn Island, and I'm going to visit the dock where the boat, because now we have like the location of where the boat came and went from. And so I want to see what businesses around there have cameras. Does the marina have cameras anywhere nearby? I'm sure that these are questions that the police are already asking, but I want to see it for myself. But the issue is, I was talking to a journalist friend of mine, and I was sort of venting about this case because I told them, social media from the moment that this story hit the internet immediately started finding these people and tagging them. And what I told my audience is outrage is completely warranted in cases like this. It is expected and it is fair for all of us to be angry that a young Black boy is gone and to want answers for that. But one, like using my platform, I'm not sharing anything that's speculative because I do not want to. No one should be trying to create outrage, and unfortunately, social media incentivizes it. But another thing that I have an issue with is that the way that people immediately accuse these people of wrongdoing and insinuated that they should have that they are suspects, right? And that was before Nolan's body was even recovered. So that was before people even knew for certain that he was dead. It's not surprising that people, especially like white boys with resources and families, who come from money, it's not surprising that they were like, yeah, we're gonna disappear now. And so what makes it hard is that as a journalist, these are people that you would typically be able to reach out to. Like, even if it's not the three friends who are on the boat, like typically as a journalist, you can go onto their profiles and find their friends and and message them and say, hey, you can stay anonymous, but were you there that day? And now no one is talking because everyone is being made out to be a suspect. And so I do think that in some ways, the response from social media has made it harder to get answers.
That's real. No, and that's a really great perspective that I don't think a lot of people take into consideration of like, yeah, imagine if something tragic happened to your son's friend group, like your immediate reaction would be probably to mourn, but also like, damn, I didn't think my child would then be held accountable. And I think this speaks to a larger conversation of because of the deep rooted history of Black kids going missing or Black kids or Black people being mistreated in white communities, that our automatic response, right, which is a trauma response at its heart, our PTSD is to believe of foul play. And the question I would pose is like, well, I would ask ourselves is what's the chicken before the egg, right? Are they shutting down as a response to because they have something to hide, or are they shutting down because they know that the public will have a negative impact or have a negative perspective because of the history of violence for Black kids? what can everyday people do, right? Not just journalists or lawyers. Actually, what can everyday people actually do? And you kind of alluded to that, right? Like not sharing misinformation. Actually, we're waiting for not perpetuating or promoting unverified claims. Like, but what can everyday people do in situations like this? One, to raise awareness, but also to ensure that we are not creating more noise than that actually prevents us from getting clarity in cases like these.
I would say that the first thing you can do if a case like this really, really matters to you is to try and support the family in ways that you can. So, and immediately when someone is reported missing, try and spread that. Really try and think hard. Like last night, I was like, who do I know that's in Tennessee? And I
Yeah.
started sending them, that missing persons report that had just come in from Tennessee. But in a case like Nolan Wells, try and support the family via their GoFundMe if you're able to do that, or support organizations that do the work of trying to keep these stories alive and find people who have gone missing or get closure for their families. But I think the most important thing to do, and I feel like this is kind of like it won't come across as like a very this won't feel like a brilliant answer, but I think that people really need to start thinking about the ways that their engagement online is capital and spend it wisely.
Yeah.
Stop rewarding the pages that are just so blatantly using this story for clicks and views. I see accounts that are like real estate agents and food critic reviews and like film reviews or pop culture commentators who are now completely focused on this. If an account has more videos about Nolan Wells than the media has news stories, that should tell you something.
Yeah.
Like you should not have been able to make 10, 12, 15 posts about Nolan Wells. Like
That's so
you
real.
can't I can't script 15 videos about Nolan Wells, we don't know enough. And so my number one thing in cases like this and just in general, I think we just have a media literacy issue, is stop rewarding pages that are doing harm. Block
Yeah.
them, actually.
I agree. Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree
Yeah.
more. Okay. So how
No,
does
that's
folks go ahead, Bria.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say no, that's so real. And I think just one last thing to leave people on is that Nolan is not content. Like, please, even people who think they're well intentioned, well, I'm just posting things to try and get people to act, but like you're treating him and his family like content, and that's not fair. And allow the family to actually get the answers. Because listen, even if we believe and feel like there is absolutely proof of foul play, we don't want people to disappear off the face of the earth with the only evidence that this family might have access to, right? We want them to be able to be held accountable in the proper channels, and not that social media's witch hunt is clouding and getting in the way of that. Again, even with well intentioned, because he's not content.
I really want people to remember that like Nolan Wells' mom, first of all, is so sweet and like so brave and strong. Her resilience is remarkable. I would not be able to do what she is doing, and his father as well. Remember that Nolan Wells is gone, but his family is here, and they can
Yep.
see what you're saying. And as much as people think that they are helping, by sharing stories that they hear, by trying to say, like, I've heard just the wildest conspiracy theories about what people think happened to Nolan Wells.
Yeah.
And when I tell people you should not be sharing this, you really should take this down. And if you're connected to someone who told you this, get them to share it with the police. But this shouldn't be online. And everyone gets so mad at me because they think that I'm trying to like suppress this. And I'm like, guys, Nolan Wells' family, my son is only 4 years younger than Nolan Wells. And I'm like, Nolan Wells' family does not deserve to come online
Yeah.
and have to be inundated with all of these conspiracy theories and imagine the horrific things that may have or could have happened to their son. Let them get to the truth, but we don't have to further traumatize them along the way while they fight for justice. That is so cruel.
Folks, today in Chicago, the NAACP convention, civil rights attorney Ben Crump joined the family of Nolan Wells, where they laid out their findings of an independent autopsy that was done on the body of the 18-year-old here in Washington, D.C.
As in the case with Nolan Wells, at the time of this report, this forensic pathologist does not know the condition of Nolan Wells. He did not know whether he was conscious or unconscious when he entered the water. He said that would be significant. He said he did not know whether he was forced into the water or unforced into the water. He said that would be significant. So he said the condition of Nolan Wells before he entered the water would be the crux of the matter. It would be of utmost importance to being able to determine a cause and manner of death. He said, definitive circumstances of death are required to determine the manner of death. For these reasons, this pathologist cannot rule out, and let me really call your attention to this. For these reasons, this pathologist cannot rule out if any intervening non-accidental factors contributed to or caused the death of Nolan Wells. Very open. He says, however, dissection of the back of the head during the layered posterior neck dissection revealed a 12 by 8 inch focal area of red discoloration in the deep soft tissues overlaying the occipital bone. And he talked about how he found red discoloration when he cut open into the back of his head towards the occipital bone, and he saw the red discoloration, and we actually saw the pictures of it. It's significant. You can't help but notice, why is this dark red here in the back of his head? And so he was important to note that in his report. He said that etiology of this finding is unclear. There are no lacerations of the overlaying skin nor fractures of the underlying skull. These findings are inconclusive for perimortem injury due to both the extensive decomposition and the absence of associated injuries. This finding, however, is significant enough to be highlighted in this preliminary report for further investigation. It is important to reiterate that the finding could not have been observed in the first autopsy because the posterior head and neck dissection were not performed. He said another limitation, move this back here. Another limitation faced by this forensic pathologist was the absence of the anterior internal neck structures. The trachea and the laryngeal cartilage, the thyroid horn, and the hyoid bone were not received with the body. So he's saying that the throat was not received with the body when he got Nolan Wells body in Washington, D.C. to perform the second autopsy. And so let's discuss that with what he said about that. He said, it is assumed that the initial pathologist retained these structures for additional evaluation. He said the retention of the anterior neck structures during an initial autopsy is a common forensic pathology practice. He was chief medical examiner for 7 years in Washington, D.C., and he said that if they had concern about throat or any fracture or compression of the throat, they too will hold them back. He doesn't know why they held the throat back, but he said the throat was not with the body of Nolan Wells when he received it in Washington, D.C. to perform the second autopsy. He said, nevertheless, a posterior neck dissection performed without review of the anterior neck structures is incomplete. Therefore, this pathologist cannot rule out injury to the neck as a contributor or a cause of death. He said he would need to have the medical examiner in Mississippi allow him to review the throat. That's why he said his autopsy is undetermined pending investigation. Remember, it's about transparency.
So, folks, so it was very interesting looking at some of the comments from people trying to understand what took place as to why they went to Chicago. Let me help some people out. Nolan Wells was killed in killed in Mississippi. The NAACP National Convention is in Chicago. Emmett Till is from Chicago, was killed in Mississippi. So, again, if you understand the history of the NAACP, they've long been involved in cases like this. So I don't understand why people, and I am totally befuddled about the sheer stupidity of people on threads and Twitter who are complaining about Ben Crump. Oh, we don't like how he talks. He doesn't win cases. It's like they have no idea what the hell happens in these cases. And we reached out to Dr. Mitchell to join us on the show, but he declined because it's an ongoing investigation. And again, we've been covering this. And Robert, again, it's a lot of conversation. People have a lot of conversation, but it is an ongoing investigation. And so what we are continuing to see is trying to get answers as to what the hell happened.
And I think that's what's most important in this case, these questions. I spoke with the family of Kendra Johnson recently, who had very similar circumstance of a young black man who ends up dead, and mysteriously nobody knows anything about what has happened to anybody. Everyone gets real quiet. You're dealing with small town politics, small town law enforcement, small town judges, etc. And the families often end up never getting justice or never getting a satisfactory answer. And this is what is so significant right now about not having an operational Department of Justice. There's one thing to see what they're doing with the Epstein files, what they're doing with other investigations, but not having an operational division of civil rights in the Justice Department is perhaps the most tragic part of what's going on with this extreme MAGA agenda, because we normally would have a federal backstop where if local jurisdictions were intransigent, if local officials were recalcitrant, you would have the Department of Justice and the FBI that could step in, as you saw with Cheney and Swerner and Grutter in the 1960s. Now this is going to be very much on the family and on outside organizations to donate, to not only determine what happened with this autopsy, but find out what happened in that crucial first 48 hours to determine how exactly did the messages get deleted off his phone. What pictures or videos are still out there on some cloud or some cell phone that might be dispositive. Where exactly this young boy's throat at? And how is that missing from the body? There are more questions are being raised by the day, and the compulsion of local jurisdictions to simply try to sweep these things under the rug. We've seen time and time again that once you start shining light on this, once you start bringing national attention, you get answers. And the fact that we don't have a Department of Justice or FBI right now that can help us means that we have to depend on ourselves to fight this fight.
Rebecca.
So, I want to shout out Dr. Roger Mitchell. He is the only Black male chief medical examiner in the country. I'm going to say that again. He is the only Black male chief medical examiner in the country. And because of his scientific knowledge and because of his medical training, he has really pushed the envelope for civil rights and for making sure that Black and brown families, especially Black families, receive answers. That is the very reason why Nolan's body came here to DC, because this is where Dr. Roger Mitchell resides. And I think it's important to say that, because this is another reason why we need more Black people going into that particular profession. I've sat on panels with him where he's gone through the criminal legal system, and he's talked about deaths while people were incarcerated. And oftentimes he went into those prisons and he was able to conduct many of those autopsies to show that there's been systemic issues, especially towards Black people, Black men who are incarcerated and who die in custody. But that said, yes, Robert's right. There's so many questions that are left, even the question about the throat. I heard a medical doctor speak on it earlier, saying that sometimes if you're still doing an investigation, then certain body parts might not go to the second or third or to the subsequent medical examiner examining the body. However, Dr. Roger Mitchell did this examination, I think at least 10 days ago, and we've seen that this autopsy has been released. Mississippi has had it longer. So even if they were keeping the throat longer to continue to pursue additional investigation, why haven't that information been made public? Why hasn't that throat then been shipped to DC for Dr. Mitchell to complete his examination of the body? There's too many questions. And we know, and I know there are different, like I'm an attorney. I know there's many attorneys who are reluctant to provide a conclusion on this, and that's responsible. But I will say this, having my family been in this country for centuries and seeing things like this happen over and over, the ancestors are speaking here. And I don't think that it was just a simple accident in the way in which the initial reports, or within an hour, the sheriff's department saying, oh, there's no foul play found. How can you say that when the body is still barely cold, when there hasn't been public findings from the original autopsy?
Derek?
Yeah, I'm going to pick up where Rebecca left off. I mean, it was problematic for me as a father of 7, 4 daughters and 3 sons, to hear a sheriff to say there's no foul play here. How is there no foul play? Because if the roles were reversed, Roland, if there was 3 young Black men and 1 white boy, 4 went over and 3 came back. Their cell phones would have been confiscated. They would have been interrogated for hours on end. It would have been a thorough investigation from beginning to end. And so this has been problematic from the time the sheriff said there's no foul play. And I get all the other players, the parents of the other 3 boys, they're very strong and political in nature. But what about Nolan Wells' family? I'm going to keep coming back to that. We continue to watch this 2-tier justice system from 1619 to 2026. How many times do we need to say, Roland, enough is enough? And that's the part that from Kadir Skinner, Eric Gardner, Breonna Taylor, the list continues. These families demand justice. And when you continue to have more questions than answers, we're going to get the response that we currently have.
Indeed, indeed. Plus, we're going to continue to cover this story, giving you the latest. And again, I need people to understand, there's a lot of conversation around this. We don't have much information. We don't have much information. So our objective is to give you real, credible information. So whatever's the latest, what's new, we'll actually have that for you. All right, folks, let me tell you about Chapter. Now, if you're on Medicare or about to be, the system is not set up to work for you. Too much fine print, too many plans, and too many people making money off of your confusion. And look, we're used to this. We're no strangers to systems that don't have our best interests at heart. But we don't have to accept it when it comes to Medicare. That's why I'm telling you about Chapter. Their advisors are independent and honest. In fact, they're the only Medicare advisors that compare every plan nationwide. And they're focused on one thing: what works for you. If there's a better plan out there, they'll find it. If you're already in the right one, they'll tell you that too. There are no games. Just last year, people who switched with Chapter saved an average of $1,100. It's 20 minutes and a real person. It's completely free. My parents actually have already called. My mom sent me a text. Folks, give Chapter a call at 724-264-8281, 724-264-8281, and connect with someone you can trust. Folks, these are the kind of services that we need for our audience here at Roland Martin Unfiltered and the Black Star Network. So call Chapter right now, 724-264-8281.